Ladies and gentlemen, hit subscribe to this channel right now. This is absolutely huge. In a couple of seconds, you will hear from Kamala Harris's own words that she was in charge of one of the greatest national security issues our country faces, yet she did nothing about it. We will get to a whole lot of topics. We'll get to a whole lot of analysis, but really quickly, and it's very important, CNN, New York urges Supreme Court not to intervene in Trump's hush money criminal case. New York Daily News, Supreme Court immunity ruling has no impact on Donald Trump hush money, Manhattan District Attorney. This is not true. It has a great deal of impact. Some of the evidence presented was President Trump speaking as president to his attorneys or to people around him. Those actions are protected by the Supreme Court. He has presidential immunity. In addition to the fact, we can go through all of these. The Guardian, Trump hush money prosecutors say conviction must stand despite immunity victory. The Guardian, Politico, Manhattan District Attorney urges judge to reject Trump's bid to toss out hush money conviction. It is unconstitutional, number one, and in a couple of seconds, you will hear Kamala Harris speak. You will hear analysis on the fact that media, Democrats are doing their usual. It's within a day and a half, she apparently became nominee after all the pledged delegates chose Biden, who won his primary. And of course, they laugh at it. They're completely they don't care at all that they had a primary that Biden won, just like they railroaded Bernie Sanders. There's zero emphasis on meritocracy within the Democratic Party. But Democrats in New York, prosecutors know that the Supreme Court will overturn the hush money conviction. ABC News, Manhattan DA asks judge not to throw out Trump's criminal hush money case. The Supreme Court backed Trump. This is the Supreme Court website, okay? Or it's the official Supreme Court blog, okay? Roberts Courts hands major wins to Trump conservative movement in 2023-2024 term. They overturned the Colorado ban unanimously. I said they would. The January sentencing, the Supreme Court stated that it was not reasonable, and left-leaning demonstrators did not get the same sentences, so they did not allow prosecutors to do everything they wanted against January defendants. And mainly I said that Trump would get a Supreme Court victory. He is going to get a huge Supreme Court victory with this overturning of the hush money conviction, which is what New York is worried about, and that's what's going to take place, because when I told you that there would be the immunity victory, and there was, official acts are protected. An official act is speaking to his attorney, his lawyer, speaking to officials, or speaking to anyone he wants to as president. It is not illegal to speak to somebody. Most importantly, the hush money conviction is predicated, and really quickly, you got to listen to this. This is very important, and then we'll get to apparently the presumptive nominee, which I still can't understand when Biden won his primary, and then you have Clinton, who basically took over the DNC in 2016. Who knows? I still think, I can't imagine, because Biden did better in terms of polling than Harris. So I don't know what they're doing. And maybe they're just waiting for that 1 or 2 days, or they want the week in November to definitely emphasize democratic and lawful means to ensure victory. But a president, a citizen, cannot be convicted of a federal crime. This is why this is all over the news now. The immunity victory was that a president is protected for official acts. An official act is a speech, speaking to confidants. You can't go after Trump for speaking to Michael Cohen, for example, okay? And then the rebuttal is, well, they were committing a crime. The FEC dropped the hush money case. Trey Traynor, Hans Avon Spakovsky, Bradley Smith. There was a brilliant FEC or campaign finance lawyer the other day, I believe it was with Maria Bartiromo, stating that Democrats are the one committing campaign finance violations right now, but the hush money case was dropped. The three FEC chairmen I mentioned stated categorically Trump did not commit a crime. He could have paid Stormy with dollar bills. He could have given Stormy dollar bills. It would not have been a crime because it was something that would have taken place with or without a presidential campaign, and that's why they did not list a specific federal statute that Trump broke. So this is huge, ladies and gentlemen. Hit subscribe to this channel right now. This is another victory on the horizon, and New York prosecutors have telegraphed this because they don't want the major Supreme Court victories to get in the way of them indicting and convicting Trump in an unconstitutional manner. The FEC dropped the case. There was no hush money case against Trump. The federal government, the Department of Justice, dropped the case. There was no case at all. And then the state unilaterally said Trump committed a federal crime. That cannot happen under the rule of law. Let's listen to the wonderful and amazing and brilliant and apparently not so truthful vice president here.
But the real work is going to take time to manifest itself. Will it be worth it? Yes. Will it take some time? Yes.
There's one other topic I wanted to talk to you about, but let me just quickly put a button.
Okay.
Do you have any plans to visit the border?
I'm here in Guatemala today. At some point, we are going to the border. We've been to the border. So this whole thing about the border, we've been to the border. We've been to the border.
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe. And I don't understand the point that you're making. I'm not discounting the importance of the border.
Well, I mentioned it because I know Republicans have certainly come at you on this, but Democratic Congressman Cuellar has a border district has said to you and the president, come. You need to see this.
Listen, I care about what's happening at the border. I'm in Guatemala because my focus is dealing with the root causes of migration. There may be some who think that that is not important, but it is my firm belief that if we care about what's happening at the border, we better care about the root causes and address them. And so that's what I'm doing.
It's not the only tough issue President Biden has handed his vice president, also recently asking her to oversee the effort to pass the Democrats.
So she didn't go to Europe. So therefore, that means it's okay that she hadn't visited the border. And media now is saying, well, she really wasn't the czar. She really wasn't in charge of that national security issue. Of course she was. And then she stated, oh, well, we have to address the root causes. Well, the root causes are the economic issues within the countries that, people leave. The United States, no country can address the economic issues within various countries around the world that have terrible economies for a number of reasons. I should say that it wasn't a national security policy objective of the Biden administration. If root causes of why people fled their countries was important to Harris and to Biden, they did not address those issues. They simply did away with any semblance of a demarcation or a border or anything like that. They should have just simply passed the bill to completely do away with any impediment to entering the country. They should have just stood by what they truly believe. They don't believe that anything should impede another human being from entering the country. Just stand by what you believe, Democrats. Don't pretend and then say, oh, well, it never really happened, da-da-da-da-da. This is 100%. If democracy doesn't rear its wonderful head in November, and Democrats through lawful and legal means, somehow win, which is, I think that Trump's going to win in resounding fashion, landslide, resounding fashion. Okay? I said Clinton would lose in 2016. But I just don't understand. Biden was actually doing better than Harris. He won his primary. Then they disregarded the rule of law and the will of their voters, and they disenfranchised millions of Democrats. Then they said within a day and a half that Harris had won. This makes Bernie Sanders seem like they never cheated Bernie Sanders. This is 10 times worse than how they railroaded Bernie Sanders. But let's go ahead and let's continue with this, ladies and gentlemen. We'll get to the Supreme Court issue in a second. That's another huge, huge, huge victory on the horizon. All of these publications, all of these news, the media outlets, the New York prosecutors, Democrats, they are completely melting down over an impending immunity victory that's going to lead to a hush money. It doesn't even have to do really with immunity, but that's going to help because a lot of the evidence that was given was also evidence of when he was president and protected under presidential immunity. Also, a state cannot level a federal crime without the federal government involved. We have a separation of powers between state and federal governments, the state and federal government. And so you can be convicted of a state and federal crime, obviously, anywhere in the country, but you need the federal government involved. The DOJ and FEC were not involved in this case, but let's continue with Harris.
The political left is now trying to argue that Vice President Kamala Harris was never actually the border czar. You may remember President Biden formally put her in charge of immigration in March of 2021.
I've asked her, the VP today, because she's the most qualified person to do it, to lead our efforts with Mexico and the Northern Triangle and the countries that help. We're going to need help in stemming the movement of so many folks, stemming the migration to our southern border.
Now it seems the left wants to erase that, like magic, from everyone's memory. New liberal media headlines claim Kamala Harris was never Biden's border czar.
People have lost trust. They've lost the trust. They've lost the trust in media. They don't trust. They don't believe. The average American does not believe the apoplectic, hysterical, laser focus of media outlets when they say, oh, suddenly Harris is a cultural phenomenon. She wasn't a phenomenon last week. How do you become a phenomenon in 2 days after a president, an incumbent, is forced out? He won his primary, and then they said that he did it for the good of the country. Another lie. They say Trump lies. Trump does not lie like Democrats. They can't even name a lie. Like CNN did like Trump's greatest lies. None of them were like consequential. It was all like hyperbolic speech, and that's it. Like about a pen, a Sharpie, things like that had nothing to do with national security. Then they say, oh, he gave secrets to people. Trump never gave a national secret to anyone, whether it was the Middle East or Russia. Had never. These are articles written through anonymous sourcing. Not one shred of evidence shows that he gave any classified data to anyone. The articles are written according to current and former U.S. officials, according to officials familiar with the matter, according to people there. Then you get the same reporting now. Oh, Harris was never the czar. Oh, Harris, it's a myth. It never happened. There is no official position named you're the czar of something in our government. That's a term used to state that somebody was in charge of a certain policy or a certain national security issue or a certain domestic issue. Okay. This is one of the biggest concerns in our country. And Trump, and then they say, oh, they wouldn't pass our bill. The bill didn't include a wall. Democrats say, well, they had a chance to pass our bill. It was a bill written by liberal Democrats. Why on earth would conservative Republicans pass an immigration bill written by by liberal Democrats? It makes no sense. That doesn't include a wall. But let's continue. This is, of course, indoctrination. This is, of course, lies. This is, of course, an attempt yet again to tell you that Biden is completely fine and Trump's the one with mental issues. And then, of course, they change their tune every second.
She was never in charge, even suggesting that the border czar title was something made up by Republicans. And Harris's left-wing allies are desperately trying to defend her poor immigration record. Let's remember together.
She assumed the role that Vice President Biden had during the Obama administration, which is diplomacy with Central America. She is not the border czar. To the extent there's anybody who's a border czar, it's the Secretary of Homeland Security.
Number one, Harris was...
And he was impeached. So it's not even, the Democrats aren't even pretending. They don't even care. They should just simply sign a bill saying do away with any impediment to stop anyone from crossing into the country. Own your own value system. They don't believe their own value system, alleged value system. You can only judge somebody by their actions, not their words. And they have done absolutely nothing on this national security issue.
Put in charge, as you said earlier, of combating the roots of immigration. She was not and is not the border czar.
Do you think Kamala Harris did a good job as the border czar?
I don't know that she was a border czar. Was she a border czar?
I don't know that she was a border czar. Was she a border czar?
Kellyanne.
Who cares about the Russian title border czar? This has been the biggest failure of the administration. She owns and eats every piece of fentanyl coming over the border. All the millions of people have come since Joe Biden said she's going to stem, quote, the flow of migrants. That has not happened.
It took her around 3 months, around 3 months, or a little over 3 months to finally visit that part of the country. It's not a concern of Democrats. It is one of the top concerns of voters. Wisconsin, it's a concern of Wisconsin. Trump is up 3 or 4 points over Harris and Biden. Okay. He is doing extremely well. And they're going to lose the House and the Senate with this. I just can't. If Republicans don't mess it up, meaning the never Trump Republicans, there are already 6 or 7 Democrats that are on board with condemning Harris on her handling of this topic. If never Trump Republicans don't mess it up for the Republican Party, if the Republican leadership, Johnson, and they don't mess it up, McConnell, this should be a huge victory. A monumental, historic victory for Republicans if they show a spine and backbone and they don't pull funding from Kerry Lake, for example.
Happened. We have had so many people come here illegally. It is a number higher than the population of 41 states. I want everybody to think about that. In fact, they have thought about it. That's why 9 years after Donald Trump elevated immigration and border security into the national consciousness, to international ridicule, called every name in the book. That's why it's number 1 or number 2, Harris, in all the swing state polls and all the national polls. People see it in their backyard now. They're offended by it. They think it's unfair. So she needs to own and eat all of the failures of the Biden-Harris. I don't care what her title was. I care what the metrics are. And the public shows up there with Israel and Hamas, handling of the border is their most vulnerable issue. And nobody, including and especially Donald Trump, should let her off the hook. There's no bigger contrast between the two.
Emily.
Yes, and, just in the last seconds, Washington Post releases a headline, an online army is coming, and it's for Kamala Harris. The point is that this is a manufactured, it's a created, it's a golem of online people.
By the way, God bless, the families, mothers, children, wanting a better life. Okay. God bless them. Trump is not talking about that he doesn't want, he wants people to do it the right way, legally. Okay. We have a system of laws in place. You can disagree with them, you can agree with them. Democrats did not enforce a great many of those laws. The issue is not that you're against, if you are a Trump Republican, you're not against the woman or child, the family fleeing economic strife. What you're against is very simple, and this is for all the wonderful, morally superior, highly educated, left-leaning people who don't understand the mentality of Donald Trump. Nobody can tell you how many people that want to do harm to the country have entered the country. We'll just leave it at that. The word starts with a T, okay? Ends with an ISM. Nobody can tell you how many people. Biden even admitted he doesn't know during his rambling debate that forced Democrats to oust him because they just pretended that they just realized he was one fry short of a Happy Meal. The lights are on, but nobody's home. Nobody can tell you how many people who are committing criminal activity or who have committed criminal activity entered the country. It's a simple reality of this topic. Democrats, liberals, progressives do not care. It's not part of their ideology. Okay, they're going to focus on January with doors opening and people getting let in by law enforcement. They're going to focus on other things, Trump's rhetoric. They're not going to address the fact that nobody can tell you how many people who have committed crimes in the past or people who are intent on taking the lives of Americans in various ways have entered the country. If you can answer that question, liberal Democrat, the world wants to know, but nobody can tell you that. And they don't care. That's the thing. It's not an issue to them. They don't care. So that's the fundamental difference between Trump and Democrats.
That don't know reality. And to your point, she has utterly failed at the border. She campaigned the last time when she failed the first time as running for president on fixing the immigration crisis. So all of a sudden, the crisis doesn't exist, nor does her participation in it. They are trying to revisionist history all of her service. They never mentioned Canada. She talked about growing up in the public school system here. Where are you talking about? But at the end of the day, that is what they are spoon feeding the Democrat Party and all of those kids that are going to vote for her.
That is such a good point.
She never met.
Where she grew up in education. Go ahead.
She never met with the border chiefs, not once. She said that she wanted to disband ICE altogether. At one point, she called ICE agents or border agents Ku Klux Klansmen, right, on the horses. And she will defend the legality.
And by the way, that famous photo was a doctored photo, or I should say the context was completely missing. The U.S. government official on the horse was not doing what the media accused him of doing.
In her view, she's supposed to be a prosecutor, and she's said all the ones that crossed over illegally are really legal, and we have to do whatever we can, however expensive the entitlements, to help them here. She will bankrupt the country on that, as well as other entitlement proposals. I mean, it's just, she will never get out of the box of the open borders of the Biden administration. And she added to all that because of her statements about the border agents and the ICE and the rest of the story. This is hot. This is going to be the number one issue, maybe even worse than inflation and the economy.
Just because you failed at something doesn't mean you get to rewrite history. And, we're not dealing with paper newspapers that people throw away and then they no longer have access to the titles and designations that people used 3 years ago.
There's literally an Axios article that stated that she was the czar. Okay, so this is a political term used just to say that somebody is responsible for a specific domestic policy or issue, or a foreign policy issue, or national security objective. That's it. And nobody can any Democrat name exactly what Harris did? See, I don't get it. I don't understand the way the Democratic Party works. I understand there's corruption there. They don't care about the will of their people, voters, constituents. I get all that. They cheat their candidates. They oust their own president. I get all that. They'll impeach Trump a million times and then go to bat for Biden with a laptop and then oust him and remove him from office. Then within 2 days, their vice president will become our vice president will become a cultural phenomenon and all this stuff. They change their tune every day. They have zero long-term value system or belief system. But I just don't understand, if you have the internet, if you've lived in this world and you understand what is going on, how you could vote for Harris over Trump, which is why that she's down in the polls and she polled worse than Biden.
We just have to enter a quick word search and we see that The Hill and Politico and several other major news organizations were calling her the border czar because she was designated the border czar, like William Bennett was the education czar, Harry Anslinger, he was the original drug czar. So it is, sure, it's a colloquial, informal designation that is still used in politics to mean something that was given to her. She was not Mrs. Root Causes, even though she failed at finding those as well.
She wasn't the root causes czar.
We showed it last hour. There's plenty of tape. Lester Holt, NBC, interviewed her. Have you been to the border? Well, I haven't been to Europe either. I mean, my goodness gracious.
Hey, everyone. I'm Emily Campagno.
And it's not just the border, it's the economy as well. Everything will get worse, okay? The inflation crisis is directly tied to Biden's energy policy, which is abysmal, okay? Which is why Democrats with Harris will keep the same policy. I just don't get it. I don't understand how they think they could win when interest rates are high, and that's the only reason inflation isn't even higher than it already is.
Time for the hot topic of the hour. President Biden expected to address the nation tonight from the Oval Office after dropping out of the 2024 presidential race, saying that the mission remains the same despite a new name at the top of the Democrat ticket. Kamala Harris says building the middle class will be, quote, a defining goal of her presidency. Watch.
We believe in a future where every person has the opportunity not just to get by, but to get ahead.
We had record low poverty with Trump, and we had record highs in household median income with low interest rates and low inflation. Okay, we didn't need high interest rates to combat rampant inflation. And when Democrats say, oh, well, you know, we have this, we achieved this economic, feat. It's like, well, but you had inflation. Real wages were down most of Biden's presidency. Wages increased rapidly, but not as rapidly as inflation. Inflation was at 9% at one point, core inflation. So it's like, then you raised interest rates to get it down to 3.5%. But you needed to raise interest rates. Now it's double. Mortgage payments are double. Mortgage rates are double, for example. Car loans, credit card payments, everything is more expensive. Then they say, well, consumer demand is still up. We have record highs in credit card debt. So it's like, if you can't afford a house, if you're in your 20s or 30s and you say, well, I can't afford a house, but my parents could afford a house, don't vote Democrat. They don't want the energy policies that will allow an economy to flourish like Trump's economy flourished. We had low inflation and low interest rates. That's key to a functioning and flourishing economy. Now we have high inflation and high interest rates. Very bad, which is why people can't afford homes.
A future where no child has to grow up in poverty.
Again, we had record low poverty, and then when Democrats prevented parents and families from working because they shut down economic activity, then they flooded the country full of stimulus payments, and that too affected inflation.
Every worker has the freedom to join a union where every person has affordable health care. Building the middle class will be a defining goal of my presidency.
Why wasn't it a defining goal of Biden's presidency? Why does Trump do better on the economy in every poll than Biden? Why would we assume that Harris would be different than Biden or any other Democrat? Why would we assume that Harris wouldn't deplete the strategic petroleum reserves in the same manner that Biden did? That's another reason inflation went down, because these people care about the environment so much. The wonderful, morally superior liberal Democrats, they make a good point. Yes, the environment, and it's very important. But then they say, oh, you can't, fossil fuels, very bad. Then they deplete the strategic petroleum reserves. And they don't realize how that impacted inflation. Had they not depleted strategic petroleum reserves and raised interest rates, we'd still have 9% inflation. So it's like there's a cause and effect. Oh, and by the way, inflation, they said, was temporary. Remember that? We can go back. They said it was temporary.
Because here's the thing we all here, Wisconsin, know. When our middle class is strong, America is strong.
Analysts are expecting the Harris campaign to push even more progressive policies than President Biden. Vice President Harris was once rated the second most liberal senator in the 116th Congress, second only to Bernie Sanders.
And by the way, I forgot which site, or I read about it today. There was a site that rated members of Congress. She was either the most liberal or one of the most liberals. And of course, the page is nowhere to be found.
Where she favored Medicare for all that comes with a $35 trillion price tag, universal basic income and rent, and utility payment controls. As president, her plans on taxes could be less business friendly than Biden's, that's for sure, as she's called for imposing a pharmaceutical excess profits tax, a bank tax, as a presidential candidate in 2019, she proposed a financial transactions tax, which economists have warned would hit retirement savings. On energy, Harris has expressed support for banning fracking, which Republicans are making a campaign issue in Rust Belt states like.
You want to ban okay, I wanted to ban fracking because I was a fool in 2015 and 2016. Then I came to my senses and said that would ruin the economy, and the price for the gas prices to heat your home would be through the roof, especially during winter in colder states. So it's like, own your own value system. I was on the left almost all my life up until the past 6-7 years, and I realized the left, the Democratic Party, that's the actual cult. They don't believe in banning fracking, but they're going to say it, okay? They lie to their constituents all the time, but see, they don't realize how detrimental these things are. They say they want to ban fracking for the environment, okay? But they then care about the middle class. If you did that, inflation would go up. Energy costs would go up. That's part of inflation. And so people would not be able to afford heating bills. Already in like California and New York, for example, energy prices are through the roof. Okay, it's double in like Los Angeles, for example, compared to anywhere else in the country. It's likely double to fill your gas tank up. So, they don't even believe, if you want to ban fracking, if you want a Green New Deal, if you want Medicare for all, which isn't feasible for 330 to 340 million Americans, okay, they can't even do Medicare for all on a state-by-state basis. Okay, try it in a state. They don't even have the ability to actually implement it within a state. So what makes anyone think it'll happen throughout the country? Let's say I'm wrong. And you're passionate about single payer, like I used to be before I realized it's not feasible. Democrats don't want it. Literally everything they say to their constituents is a lie. And then they say Trump's a liar. It's like, no, Trump actually believes everything he says, wants to implement it, and never a Trump Republicans and Democrats stop him.
Pennsylvania, where fracking is a $5 billion a year industry. Harris has also said she would abolish private health insurance, giving the government control over all health care, and said that she supports public health care for illegals. a lot there to get your arms around.
That is crazy. So we're not going to take care of our vets, but we're going to give free health care to illegal migrants, all however many, 30 million of them or whatever it is. I mean, that is the craziest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah.
And it's going to be more, too.
Right. That's the beginning.
Her stance is really, really far left. But let's not forget the last 3.5 years she owns. So she comes out there and she says, it's not, I don't want just to get by. I want people to get ahead. Is that what you wanted for the last 3.5 years? When you had for 2 years, you had the presidency, they had the House, they had the Senate, and the middle class feels worse off than they did before. 70% of Americans say that they're having to make sacrifices. Many people are saying that they can't pay their bills month to month. 21% increase in groceries. That's what you're doing in the middle class. How can you say that this is a new campaign? You are extending. This is your second term.
She owns this. And the middle class, you're right, is objectively worse off. They're poorer, they're less safe, and this country is less safe, and our future is bleaker because of this administration.
Democrats say, the crime rate's down, but assaults are up. You can look at any aggregate number. Wages. Look at wages. Well, real wages are down. Well, the crime rate's down, but assaults are up. You can look at any aggregate number that media and Democrats try to tout, and if you look at it closer, you realize, it's missing context.
And it's just so remarkable. I guess they're going to lose the threat to democracy narrative. It's now going to be, we like democracy, but we love George Clooney, because that seems to be the way they're picking their nominees. But all of this platitudinal nonsense, every child should learn to read and everyone should, it's everyone hopefully can see through this stuff, because they've had 4 years. They've utterly failed. We're worse off. Everything that's bad will get worse under her, because this border, we will not have a border. We have a pseudo border now. It will be, no one will get deported, and they will get every benefit that American citizens get, meaning the illegal aliens will get, and we'll all be worse off because of it.
Well, the Wall Street Journal editorial board writes a piece. In her campaign debut, Kamala Harris steers left. And they write, Ms. Harris, the VP said that she sees a future where every worker has the freedom to join a union. We just heard her say it. Right. And every person has affordable health care, affordable child care, and family leave. And every senior can retire with dignity. The Journal writes, the promise is that Uncle Sam will deliver it all. She's pledged to sign federal laws to ban assault weapons, override state abortion limitations. The hell with the Supreme Court.
So if you ban the ability for a family or a person to protect himself or themselves, how does that help the country? One thing, I'm trying to speak in an algorithmically friendly manner. When you have these activists who've survived these mass atrocities, and the one noteworthy thing about them is that they've survived a mass atrocity, so therefore they want to erase the Second Amendment because they've survived the atrocity. The question that should be posed, that should be asked of them is, if you had, if that person who survived the atrocity had a firearm, would they engage in reciprocal force to end the ability of the person committing the atrocity to keep committing the evil act? If you can follow me, I'm trying to be as algorithmically friendly as possible. Okay, if they had the means, if they had the same weapon, okay, as the person utilizing the weapon to just commit an unspeakable atrocity, would they then use it against that evil madman? Of course they would. I mean, one would think they would. Okay, that alone completely undermines the entire argument. Most of these atrocities are stopped only when reciprocal force is used. When reciprocal force isn't used, the madman can do his taxes, spend as much time as he wants, go and search for more innocent people. And so this is why security details are given tens of thousands of dollars by Democrats in Congress. Okay, but you don't need a security detail if you have a Second Amendment. It's your own security detail. So a criminal, a madman, a person intent on committing evil, which is a concept that Democrats don't really understand. They think that government can protect everyone from evildoers. which is, of course, nonsense, especially when the government commits evil. But the point is, I'm trying to speak in an algorithmically friendly manner. Okay, you engage in reciprocal conduct. That's all with somebody who wants to hurt you.
Court.
Yeah, who needs it? We'll just
do what you want.
We'll just give people everything they want, and we'll pay for it by printing more money, and we'll raise taxes. A new bank tax? Really? Have you seen the profit margins on banks? It's not easy to run a bank. Oh, we're going to have a new trading tax. Why don't we tax the profits that you haven't yet made on your stocks because they've gone up? You've got a paper gain.
Crazy.
Let's tax that. I mean, that's where they're coming from.
By the way, they want to tax billionaires. They want huge corporate taxes. Who do you think is smarter, Congress, the Democratic Party, or billionaires and the CEOs of corporations who will do anything possible to fire employees, to slash workforce, to lay off people to ensure that they make the profit they want? That's what happens with raising the minimum wage to $20 or $25 or whatever. Then suddenly the work hours get cut, and then people lose their jobs and they lose the ability to work and make money. These things don't add up. Like, see, when Bernie Sanders talks about, taking on billionaires, the billionaires are the ones that made money because they're very smart at making money. Bernie never made money for himself. He was a lifelong politician. Okay. So when you focus on raising the minimum wage, immediately corporations are going to start laying off people, which is what we've seen happen. You're actually in many ways hurting people. But you want to also ensure that there's not inflation and interest rates that are high, which is what took place during Biden's administration, which hurts people a lot worse than having a lower minimum wage.
And what could possibly go wrong?
We talk about the impact on banks and, big institutions. How about the impact on individuals? Because this whole idea that you're not going to pay any additional taxes if you're making $400,000 or less has already been debunked.
Yeah, everyone sees this. And it's so funny. The Democratic Party is the party of the elite now. They've abandoned the middle class and the workers long ago. Unfortunately, not all of them have seen it because the Democrats keep with these mantras about the middle class. But look at what's happening to the middle class. Where do they do? They did better under Trump, worse under Biden. That's objectively true.
Now, I wonder if the whole gimmick of, it's the first woman president will override the specifics on policies that we all understand, Lee.
Look, I think there's a really interesting narrative about how you have to support her because she's a woman. And also, I think the other issue that is going to be really important in this election, we've talked about this some, is abortion. Is she going to own that? And she did talk yesterday about reproductive freedom. She spent a significant amount of time.
They're going to jam this down our throat for the next 100 days. It's going to be all about abortion.
Is going to be something, and we know that independent and Democratic women say that we might not like either candidate, but that's going to be the thing that gets in the polls. And I think that we're going to hear about that a lot. And they're going to try to say, and I've heard them say this already, they're putting words in Trump's mouth. They're saying that he's going to have abortion bans. He said he is not going to have abortion bans. They're saying that he's going to do away with IVF. He has said he's not going to do that. And yet they're saying it, and it is a lie.
Yeah.
Just like when Biden said that Trump stated people were losers, that never happened. They lie all the time. Trump never said that. This is based on anonymous sourcing. It's called gossip and hearsay. If somebody came to you and said, Sally said this about you, well, that's gossip and hearsay. You have no clue. You have no clue if that's true. That's called journalism nowadays.
It is misleading and it is wrong.
Just the way that they've been saying he's a threat to democracy while, in fact, doing all these threatening things to democracy while they say it. Just the other day, Biden comes out, he says he wants to put term limits in the Supreme Court. They want to pack the Supreme Court and they want to remove Donald Trump's name from the ballot. I mean, can you get any more undemocratic Democrat than that?
And radical.
And radical, yeah.
Yeah. How many people chose the Democratic nominee? It seems like four or five people got to choose their nominee.
The interesting thing is that the Democrats actually on television laugh at the notion that anyone should criticize them. The arrogance is unbelievable. They don't even care. I'll watch like these Democratic Party pundits. They'll laugh. Oh, who cares? It's as if it's their little thing and it's nobody's business. It's like, well, no, it's a political primary that is supposed to be based on meritocracy. That's why you have a primary. We already know it doesn't exist, which is why I went out on a limb and said they're probably gonna, they can't possibly go with Harris. And like, apparently they are, but probably not. I don't know. Who knows? I wouldn't be surprised, like I said, if Clinton suddenly swoops in. But let's just assume that Harris is the presumptive nominee. Let's assume that, there's no other twists and turns, which I think there will be. So that's it. How did she win the primary? Because she was literally anointed. Okay, this is why I lost respect for Bernie Sanders as a politician, probably a very good human being. But as a politician, Bernie Sanders was cheated, railroaded. They lied to his voters. They took money from his voters. They purchased a Steele dossier with the money he raised, which was then led to a campaign finance violation that Democrats and the Clinton campaign paid. And now they ousted an incumbent president, and they're trying to market it as he was selfless. Selfless? How was he selfless? He was forced out. He was forced out. He didn't want to leave. Anyway, hit subscribe to this channel. Huge, 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 monumental, historic victory for Trump on the horizon. Another huge victory for Trump. To my super chat, thank you. I'll see you tomorrow, everybody. Definitely starting August 1st, I will do 2 live streams a day and an upload. I'll start doing some segments on the other channels as well. And we'll get the ball rolling. August, September, October, people. And then we get a monumental victory for Trump. It will be the greatest political comeback of all time. Hit subscribe.